Good day, I am Leslie Amparo and I am here to present the Chapter 19, Establishing Performance Standards. After reading this chapter, you should be able to explain the meaning and significance of quality and quantity standards in labor control, identify the three steps used to establish standards, explain the needs for organizational plan, describe an organizational chart, define the praise job description, define the praise job analysis, identify the three parts of job description, define the praise job specification, explain the difference between variable cost personnel and fixed cost personnel. Explain how records of business volume are used in scheduling. Explain the difference between the scheduling of variable cost personnel and scheduling of fixed cost personnel. Describe how to prepare an hourly schedule for variable cost personnel using the records of business volume. Describe how to develop performance standards based on a test period. Establishing standards and standard procedures. Standards were defined as rules of measures established for making comparison or judgments. Management establishes standards for many reasons, one of which is to determine the extent to which the rules of organizational activities match those anticipated by plans. Other chapters illustrated the importance of standards for judging the effectiveness of food and beverages cost controls. Now, it's appropriate to discuss using standards for evaluating employee performance and controlling labor cost. Earlier, chapters explained that there are three kinds of standards used in cost control. Number one is quality standards, quantity standards, and cost standards. Quality standards. Before developing quality standards for employee performance, a manager must first have a clear and detailed understanding of the establishment, including the quality standards for food and beverage products. With this clearly in mind, a manager can then begin to establish quality standards for employee performance. While the quantity standards, once appropriate quality standards have been established, corresponding quantity standards must be developed. The manager must determine the number of times a task can be performed within a certain time of period at a given level of quality. The typical time period is the same as the use of payroll purposes, the hour. In effect, the manager must determine the quantity of performance to be accepted per hour and by extension per meal and per day from employees in each of job classification. There are three steps in establishing standards and standard procedure for employees requires. Number one is organizing the enterprise. Second, preparing job descriptions. And last, scheduling employees. Organizing the enterprise is under A. Establishing an organizational plan. Establishing an organizational plan requires the owner or manager to first develop a clear picture of the nature of the operation. This includes the type of clientele, the nature of the products offered, and the extent and type of service rendered as discussed earlier in this chapter. In addition, it should include some reasonable estimate of the number of meals to be prepared and served. Once the owner or manager has developed this basic idea of the nature and scope of the operation, he or she begin to think in terms of specific jobs and must be performed. Preparing an organization chart. In order that all of these distinctions and relationships may be seen in their proper perspective, the owner or manager of a restaurant is usually well advised to set them down on a paper in a form of an organization chart, such as the figure below. The Chart shows the positions and describes reporting relationships within an organization. The lines drawn from one position to another signify the lines of authority. An unbroken line from one person to another indicates that the person below reports to and takes direction from the person immediately above on the chart. The dotted lines show communication and cooperation between the two positions, but one does not have authority over or responsibility for the actions of the other. The lateral dotted line between the executive chef and the chief steward shows that the two are expected to cooperate in every possible way in accomplishing their respective tasks, but neither takes direction from the another. Preparing job descriptions. Once the organization chart is completed and accurately reflects the organizational plan of the owner or manager, particularly with respect to the job titles needed for successful operation. It is necessary to gather the information required to prepare an appropriate job description for each job title on the chart. The term given the process of gathering this information is job analysis. Job analysis is the first step in preparing job descriptions. The information necessary to complete job analysis may be gathered in any of several ways. In new food and beverage operation, the information tends to be based on a manager's previous experiences in this industry. In existing operations, the two most common methods are first, interviewing workers and supervisors to obtain the information. Second is observing workers on site as they perform the jobs. These interviews are typically conducted on premises in a reasonably quiet area, somewhat removed from the actual worksite. In some instances, they are videotaped to facilitate review. Each interview is carefully instructed to elicit the specific information required for the job analysis. The interviews and observed are designed to provide information about the following: job objectives, specific tasks required to achieve objectives, performance standards, knowledge and skills necessary, and education and experience required. Writing job descriptions. What is job description? Job description are detailed written statements that describe jobs. They can be quite detailed. In some instances, job descriptions list very specific duties and directions for performing jobs. Job description for particular job should answer three important questions. Number one is what is to be done? Second, when is it done? And last, where is it done? Today, growing numbers of experts in the field of human sources development advocate including performance criteria in job description. Performance criteria are a statement that describe an acceptable level of job performance. Included in performance criteria are standards of job performance that should be known and understood by each job holder because each is likely to be evaluated on the basis of these standards. For example, if the job description for a server includes the statement such as customers are greeted and dealt with in a polite and helpful manner at all times, then there is a standard established that can be used as a basis for evaluating servers' behavior toward customer. A job description typically has three parts. Number one is heading, second is summary, and third is list. A heading that states a job title and department in which the job is located. In some organizations, the heading may include such as information as the number of positions with the particular job title, the specific hours, days, and shifts worked by those with the job title and the supervisor to whom those with that job title report. A summary of the duties of the job, typically written in paragraph form. The summary enables the reader to quickly gain some basic understanding of the nature and purpose of a particular job. By reading the summaries of all the jobs in a particular department, one can obtain a great deal of information about the department in a very short time. This can be a great benefit to a new manager. And last, a list of specific duties assigned of the job. This will be as detailed as possible, to the point that well-written job description can be used as step-by-step instructions for doing the specific work required of those holding these jobs. And here are the example of the kind job description that one may find in a food service enterprise. Note the degree of specific detail provided. Job description that include the level of detail can be of great assistance to those responsible for developing employee training program. Labor classifications for control purposes. It is important for any manager attempting to develop schedules for employees and to control labor costs to recognize that there are two classifications of employees. Number one is variable cost personnel. Variable cost personnel are those whose numbers are linked to business volume. As business volume increases, it becomes necessary to hire more personnel in this category. As a consequence, the total labor cost increase for this category of employees. The reverse are also should be true. As business volume decrease, it is possible to decrease the number of employees in this category and thus decrease the total labor cost for the category of employees. And the second is fixed cost personnel are those whose numbers are unrelated to business volume. Although business volume in a given establishment may increase or decrease, the number of these employees remains relatively constant. For this reason, the cost of their services tends to remain relatively constant. Typically, examples of fixed cost personnel includes manager, bookkeepers, chefs, and stewards, as well as a maintenance personnel and cashiers.
Keeping and using records of business volume. A very important step that managers should take before scheduling employees is to keep records of business volume. These typically are in the form of tallies of numbers of covers served. For best results, these tallies should be made both daily and hourly. So let's talk about daily tallies. Several techniques are commonly used for determining the numbers of covers served daily. Perhaps the simplest is to take the information from records being prepared for sales history. If a cashier, for example, is developing records of the number per portions of each entree served in the dining room, one may determine the total number of covers served by totaling the number of portions served for all items on the menu. In small restaurants where sales histories are not developed but where guest checks are used, it is reasonably simple to determine the number of persons served from information on the checks after the close of a business. A third approach, becoming the most common in the industry today, is to use electronic means to record sales. This may be done with either computers or their close relatives, electronic cash registers. Either of these provide up to the minute data, indicating the number of persons or covers served. Any manager or owner is in a better business position if he or she can determine today what conditions and sales volume are likely to be encountered in the future period. Forecasting is an attempt to make these determinations. Any owner or manager can use historical records to predict what is likely to occur in the near future. Forecasting enable a manager to exercise some degree of control over food and beverage purchasing and production. for example, and thus to gain some control over food and beverage costs. Similarly, a manager can exercise greater control over labor costs if he or she is able to predict the establishment's labor requirements with some reasonable degree of accuracy. This can be accomplished if the manager can predict business volume and then schedule an appropriate number of variable cost personnel for those days and times when they are needed. With data collected over a suitable period, business volume can be forecasted with some reasonable degree of accuracy. Many restaurants have found, for example, that the number of customers served varies from day to day during the week. Many have found that Monday is normally slower than Friday. Knowing this is in advance, a manager is able to schedule an appropriate number of employees for each of the days, with fewer on Mondays and more on Fridays. Next is the hourly tallies. There are several manuals for developing the hourly records of business volume. A common way is to require the dining room manager to count and record the number of customers seated in the dining room every hour on the hour. Although this is by far the simplest system, it is not the most accurate. To the extent that this count is used to schedule preparation personnel as well as dining room personnel, it may be misleading and may result in the preparation of inefficient work schedules. To offset the inadequacy of this hourly counting procedure, some managers have instituted a system requiring that each guest check or jupe be timestamped in the kitchen as the order is given to cooks. The checks or jupes are then analyzed at the end of the day. These results are more accurately reflect the times when service personnel take orders as well as when preparation personnel receive them. A third system for developing records of hourly volume of business requires that the cashier in the dining room record the number of covers served as customers settle guest checks. Each guest check reaches the cashier as the customer leaves the restaurant. Therefore, a simple system can be instituted to have the cashier record covers on a form such as that illustrated in Figure 19.4. So as we can see in Figure 19.4, it is the tabulated form of the hourly volume of business for a given day. And the cashier determines how many covers are reflected on the check and records that number in the space on the form for the 1 hour period then current. It happens when the guest check has been settled and the transaction is completed. This figure 19.5 shows the degree of fluctuation in hourly volume of business for this particular restaurant is readily apparent. However, this graph represents only one day, a certain Friday in April, and no manager can safely assume that one specific day is typical. Clearly, it would be unwise to base general scheduling on such limited information. Therefore, it is necessary to accumulate similar data for other Fridays and for other days of the week as well. The broader picture of operations that will emerge can provide a better basis for making scheduling decisions. In Figure 19.6, we can see the tabulated hourly volume data for a series of days. Let's say, for example, it is Fridays, the Fridays of April, April 1, April 8, April 15, 22, and April 29. We can see the hourly time periods and the records of each Friday. Charts of this nature may be prepared for each day of the business week. Together, they present a history of the hourly volume of business that management can use to plan future schedules and thus to improve control over the cost of labor. One of the keys to labor cost control is effective scheduling, and it is very important to schedule labor according to anticipated requirements based on experience. So next is we need to translate the raw numbers such as those in Figure 19.6 into a graph that reflects the hourly volume experience over a reasonable period. The graph shown in figure 19.7 is a picture of the hourly volume of business for Fridays in the month of April. The figures on the vertical axis show volume of business and those on the horizontal axis show hourly periods of the operating day. Three lines are plotted on the graph to show various levels of volume for each hour. The upper dotted line shows the maximum volume experienced at each hour during the period covered by the graph, and the lower dotted line shows the minimum. These are the extremes to which the hourly volume has gone during the period covered. And the solid middle line shows the median. The median is the value of the middle item in a group. It is the middle point. This figure shows that business volume on the 5 successive Fridays between the hours of noon and 1 p.m. range from 85 to 107 covers. The numbers of covers during that hour for the 5 days taken in ascending order were 85, 90, 100, 105, and 107. From this list of 5 days, the two with the highest values were the days when volume reached 105 and 107 covers per hour. The 2 days with the lowest volume were those on which it was 85 and 90 covers per hour. By eliminating the 2 highest and 2 lowest values, one is left with the value in the middle, the median. If the list of values had covered 15 days, one could identify the median by eliminating the 7 highest and 7 lowest values. And the advantage of determining the median number of covers served during an hour rather than the arithmetic mean, commonly known as the average, is that the median shows the central tendency unaffected by either high or low extremes. For example, if the number of covers served between 1 and 2 p.m. on 5 successive Fridays were 65, 66, 68, 71, and 25, the arithmetic mean or average would be the total of 295 divided by the 5 periods represented, or 59 covers. The median is 66, however, which is clearly more representative of the typical number of covers served. In this case, the average is weighted too heavily by the one extremely low number of covers served on one particular day. Because these figures are to be used for staff scheduling, it will be safer to plan on the basis of the median rather than on the arithmetic average. The presence on the graph of both the maximum and minimum numbers served, as discussed earlier, provides the manager with a complete picture of the hourly volume of sales, the typical number of covers served, as well as the maximum and minimum extremes. Variable cost employees. A preliminary step in the scheduling of variable cost employees is determining the types and numbers of employees needed at given levels of business volume. These are used to develop staffing tables. Staffing tables are variable cost employees or are estimates of the numbers of these employees required at various levels of business volume, given the quality and quantity standards established for their work. Each manager must make a judgment about the number needed in each club classification affected by hourly volume. For servers, the manager must determine the number of covers that each can serve in a given hour while maintaining the established service standards. And for dishwashers, the manager must determine the quantity of dishes that each can process in an hour. A similar judgment must be made for each job category. Fixed cost employees. Before fixed cost personnel can be scheduled with any degree of certainty, the manager must determine the specific requirements of the job that should be taken into account in his scheduling. The details should be considered before establishing the work schedule for the job. When all such requirements have been considered, a manager can establish and post a schedule for fixed cost personnel resembling that illustrated in Figure 19.11. Although schedules for fixed cost employees tend not to change from one week to the next, major changes in business volume for protracted periods may cause management to reassess both schedules and costs for fixed cost personnel. Substantial decreases in business volume, for example, may suggest the need for a substantial decrease in labor costs generally, including a reduction in the number of fixed cost personnel. When such a step is necessary, it is important to see that any reduction in staff does not lead to a decrease in operating efficiency. The foregoing is a very basic approach to labor cost control commonly used by many food and beverage managers. It establishes performance standards for staff, but does so informally. A better approach is to base one's standards on written evaluations of performance accumulated over a period of time. The results will be more objective and are likely to be better suited to monitoring performance. Managers in large organizations are better equipped to establish performance standards for work in this way and to use the resulting standards for evaluating the degree of efficiency with which managers of individual units of scheduled employees. In such organizations, standards of employee performance have been established and various means have been found to compare these performance standards with actual performance. Figure 19.11 shows the sample schedule for some fixed cost personnel. As you can see, it is for the week of April 31 to May 6. The employees have their schedules on this figure, and we can see that they 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 has a day off on their chosen day, and we can see that all the hours are the same on their working days. Next is the performance standards based on test period. Performance standards developed from records kept during a test period take both quantity and quality standards for work into account. A test period of a particular number of days or weeks is established for gathering data. During this period, detailed sales records are kept indicating the number of covers served per day or per meal depending on the type of establishment being analyzed. Managers also record the number of staff members on duty in each fixed and variable cost job and review each, making judgments about sufficiency of staff and efficiency of employee performance. Figure 19.12 relates numbers of variable cost personnel to sales volume in covers for a particular test period and shows one manager's judgments about staffing during that period. As the chart shows, with sales of 275 covers and 7 servers scheduled for lunch on May 1, the manager judged performance to be highly inefficient because of overstaffing and recorded his observations for future reference. As the 1-week period progressed, he continued to note his estimates of labor efficiency, relating the number of servers working to the total number of covers served. Although figure 19.12 has been set up to record estimates of labor efficiency for an entire meal period, it is also possible to do this on an early basis if a more detailed view is required. Standard staffing requirements. Once appropriate charts have been prepared for a task period and the manager has a record of sales volume, numbers of variable cost employees working, and his or her own personal estimates of the employee's efficiency, it is time to take the next logical step to develop a standard staffing requirements, traditionally known as manpower requirements for variable cost personnel at several levels of business volume. Figure 19.13, a typical example, shows standard staffing requirements for variable cost personnel in each category. It is apparent from a comparison of figures 19.12 and 19.13 that this manager judged 7 servers excessive for serving 275 covers on May 1 and therefore set 5 as more appropriate number. Similarly, he judged 7 as insufficient for serving 500 covers on May 7 and determined that this number of covers could be satisfactorily served by 8 servers. Standard work hours. Standard work hours is the number of employee work hours required to perform a given volume of work. It is normally related to the work of those in specific job categories such as servers, dishwashers, or cooks. If, for example, 8 servers are needed to serve 500 covers in a 3-hour luncheon period, the standard work hours required for servers are calculated as follows. 8 servers times 3 hours equals 24 work hours. The 24 work hours would become the standard for serving 500 covers over a luncheon period. Given a forecast of 500 covers, the scheduling of any number of servers' work hours in excess of 24 would be an indication of poor scheduling. Fewer than 24 would also be an indication of poor scheduling and would further suggest that unsatisfactory levels of service quality will be provided to customers. Varying numbers of standard work hours should be established for varying levels of sales volume, and it is the responsibility of management to establish these standards. By employing the techniques previously discussed, management can develop tables of standard work hours for all job categories at various levels of business activity. Figure 19.14 illustrates a table of standard work hours for variable cost personnel for a particular restaurant. Used in conjunction with forecast of sales volume, these figures are helpful both in forecasting work hours required and in scheduling employees as efficiently as possible. For example, assume that the manager of a given restaurant, after referring to the establishment's sales history, has forecasted 500 covers for a given luncheon period. Given that level of sales volume, one can determine from the chart illustrated in Figure 19.14 that the standard work hours required for that level of sales are as follows. Service personnel is 24, warehousing personnel is 12, and preparation personnel is 12. Next is standard cost. The development of standard work hours makes possible the development of standard labor cost. This may be done simply by multiplying the number of standard work hours required to perform a given volume of work by the hourly wage paid those performing the work. For example, assume that servers are paid $4 per hour and that 24 standard work hours are required to serve 500 covers in a 3-hour luncheon period, as indicated in Figure 19.14. Standard cost for this can be calculated by multiplying the number of standard work hours by hourly wage. So, 24 hours times $4 per hour equals $96 standard cost. The standard cost for servers serving 500 covers in a 3-hour period is $96. Similar calculations are used to determine standard costs for other categories of employees such as cooks, dishwashers, and others.